Hello and welcome to Piano Shack with me, Woody. Thank you for tuning in. I've always wanted to be a better finger drummer. I really admire the guys that can do this well. You just saw what kind of capabilities I have, and there's a lot of room for improvement. So today, we're going to play along with some YouTube drummers because the difficulty for me is always knowing which patterns and grooves to play, so I think we can get some ideas by watching some of the famous drummers on YouTube and trying to imitate them. Now, I do know the basics, as you saw, so I'll also share with you some tips, advice, and help on getting started for the beginners that also want to try this out. We'll talk about where the drum kits are, which fingers and hands to use for the different sounds, and some basic idea on getting the coordination and syncopation right. So, without further ado, let's get on with this. This is going to be a lot of fun. Okay, let's talk about the drum kit then. So, I am using the PSR today, but most keyboards, home keyboards, and synthesizer workstations do have built-in drum kits and rhythm sounds. And Fortunately, the layout of those follows a specific standard. It has been about the same for the last 20 years or so, defined by the general MIDI standard, where exactly all the drum kit sounds should be laid out across the keyboard. So the first thing you want to find is the kick drum, or I think we call it the bass drum in the UK. We used to anyway, although I think people are calling it kick. That's the big round drum that you hit with your the pedal with your right foot. So we're going to look for middle C on the keyboard, and then we're going to go down one octave to here, and that is where the kick drum is found. I'm using a power rock kit here on the SX900, which sounds pretty good. Immediately up from that, on the D then, you'll find your snare. And in between, you'll find usually a stick sound or a rim shot, which is when you hit the stick on the edge of the snare drum. That's there. It's lashings of reverb on this particular kit, which does sound quite nice. So there we go. Then here, we normally have some kind of percussion sound. In this case, it's a clap. Okay, and if you want a variation on the bass drum, you'll find one on the B below. That's pretty much standardized as well. In fact, as we carry on down, you'll find variations of the snare as well. There's another kick, and there's another. That's a stick sound, isn't it? Hitting the sticks together. And another snare. So here we've got some alternatives to the primary kick and snare sound that we have here, which is all really nice. So another note up, if we go another tone up to the E, you'll find a variation on the snare as well, so it's a slightly tighter sound on this particular kit. So we've covered these three. If we go to the cluster of these three black notes now, because that's the next most important thing to learn, we have our hi-hats. So the F sharp is a strike of the hi-hat with the pedal of the hi-hat closed. So it's a closed hi-hat sound. It closes those two cymbals, clamps them together. If we go up to the A flat, sounds very similar, but a slightly more open sound there on the hi-hat. So that's striking it whilst the two cymbals are slightly more open. And then here, that rings out really, really nicely. That's the sound of the hi-hat, then striking the hi-hat with the stick with your foot off the pedal. Your left foot is what you use to play the hi-hat pedal on the drums, the left foot. So with it fully off the pedal, you get the open sound because the two cymbals are free to vibrate as you strike them with the stick. Now, one thing to note about this group of hi-hat sounds then is that there is an interesting effect here. If you play the open hi-hat and then press the closed hi-hat immediately afterwards, this one doesn't carry on ringing out, just like a real hi-hat would do. These are called choke groups in drum machines. This sound will choke this one, just as it would on a real drum kit. Okay, let's carry on up with the sharps and flats. That's our crash cymbal. That's the ride cymbal. I think this one is, I think that's called a splash. You typically use these at the end of a fill. There's your ride. If we carry on going up, I think we have a, there. That's also the ride cymbal, but the drummer is now striking it in the bell in the middle of the cymbal. Here's the other sound. That's when you're playing it at the edge of the cymbal. Okay, the one more thing I'm going to show you now is where the tom-toms are. So these are played using these white notes there. So how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the way these are normally laid out, there are typically 3 toms on a drum kit, and these 2 would be the, like a roll played on the high tom. That's the C and the D. High tom is the smallest tom. This is the mid tom. And here's the floor tom. So the way they usually do it on these GM MIDI drum kit layouts is that you can use 2 fingers to play fills. All right. And this will be the same on any of your keyboard workstations, synths, general MIDI sound modules and so on. If you don't have a keyboard with these, I can highly recommend Easy Drummer actually. You can regularly find that on sale. It's a piece of software that you put up on your computer there with a sample library with all the sounds of a very nice drum kit. And usually you can find this one on sale during the pretty small amount of money. I think I've bought Easy Drummer for $20 or $30. If you want something slightly more high-end, you've got the Native Instruments drum kit sample libraries as well, which are really great, but a bit more expensive. So I do recommend Easy Drummer if you don't have a keyboard with drum sounds built in and you just want to get started. You will, of course, need a MIDI controller if you don't have that. So let's carry on up the keyboard here. Once you get past here, you get into your percussion, which sounds really great on the Yamaha here, actually. A lot of Latin percussion sounds and so on, which are a lot of fun to play. And during the introduction at the start there, you saw me using, I'm not sure if it's on the camera now, as a kind of metronome, I'm using some rhythms on the multi-pad controls. More cowbell. Okay, let's move on and talk about putting together some basic rhythms. Okay, before we can play anything, we need to discuss which fingers and hands to use. Now, I do try to bear in mind what a real drummer, which hands and feet they would be playing when I'm thinking about which fingers to use. So the hi-hat is normally played with your right hand. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing here and anchor my second finger here, because I can actually use my second finger with the most accuracy to play rhythms on the hi-hat, and the timing of the hi-hat is really vital to the groove of the rhythm that we're going to play. So I'll use that one there, and then that frees up these 2 fingers very conveniently to play the other hi-hat sounds. You could do the crash cymbal with your little finger, but I tend to just move my whole hand up for that. Okay, now for the kick drum and the snare then. A drummer would play the snare drum with his left hand, so we'll do the same thing. This makes it easy actually if you ever get the chance to play a real drum kit, or if you're a drummer yourself, you might find this a bit easier. So we're going to do the snare with my second finger, and then it's easiest, I suppose, to let your third finger do the kick. So those are the fingers that we're going to use. Now we'll try putting it all together. Okay, let's try with the very most basic beat first. We'll just do one hand at a time. So I want you to have a go at this if you're a beginner to finger drumming on the keys and you want to have a go. This is a good place to start. So find your kick drum and then just alternate with the snare. The very most basic rhythm there is. One thing I forgot to mention as well is that the drum samples here are velocity sensitive, so if I play softly, really nice. Dynamics. For now, let's stick to our basic pattern. Now we're going to play eighths with our right hand on the hi-hat, like this. Actually, that's quarter notes, fourths. You should be able to manage this because everything is playing at exactly the same time. It's just a bit of a struggle for you perhaps to remember to alternate your fingers here. Okay, but this is a good exercise to get your coordination down. Now we are going to switch to eighths on the hi-hat. So it's going to go twice as fast. Instead of 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, here we go. Easier said than done. That's the most basic pattern, and now we can also add in, I like to add in a little open hi-hat. So it's going to go like this. You can do an open hi-hat whenever you feel for it really, but actually it's usually at the end of a bar. Now a more advanced technique as you get comfortable with this is to add a bit of dynamics to the hi-hat pattern maybe. Doing accents on the 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is typically how a real drummer would do it. Once you've got that down, you can experiment with different patterns with the kick and the snare, like this. That's a classic rock pattern. Or like this. Maybe add a little fill there on the end. We could do like this. Okay, and then if you're feeling really adventurous, you can put in a fill with the toms, which is something I'm really used to myself. We can try something. Remember, high tom, mid tom, low tom or floor tom. Let's try it. Okay, something along those lines. But the thing I struggle with when finger drumming is knowing what patterns to play and trying to play it as a drummer would as well. Remember, you've got to keep in mind a drummer only has 4 limbs. We have a lot of fingers, but to keep it realistic, we have to try and play it as a real drummer would. So let's go over to YouTube now. Try and find some clips of some YouTube drummers playing some nice grooves and patterns. Let's try and imitate them to get a bit of inspiration. Okay then, Jim Dooley is a drummer who I've supported in the past because I've bought some of his beats, loops and patterns. He publishes them on YouTube, but you can go and download them if you want at a small charge. I think he's got a subscription or something. So let's take a listen to some of his most popular uploads, shall we? And then we'll take it from there. Start with this rock beat. Okay, I'm going to try and find a pattern where we can see what he's doing, but let's take a listen first. Okay. That's difficult, really difficult. Let's take a little listen, we'll break it down. Okay, it's quite a lot of syncopation here. And the hi-hat was doing something nice as well. Okay. That was tough, man. Let's try and find a simpler one. And let's see if we can find a groove where we can actually see what he's doing as well. Groove rock, perhaps, a slightly slower tempo. Nice. So you can see Jim is using his right hand for the hi-hats. Let's pause this for a second. He's using his left hand on the snare here. Let's take another listen. Okay, let's get the snare and the kick drum first. By the way, if you have a metronome, you might want to use that for these exercises just to make sure you're not speeding up or slowing down. Okay, so it's like this. That's a better snare. Ah! This is tough. This is really tough. Let's have another listen. Wow, it's really hard to keep this one going whilst you're doing that syncopated kick and snare pattern. I'm failing quite miserably at this. One more time with each hand. Ah! Can't do it. I can't do it. When I do that with the kick, I mess up the hi-hat. Let's try one more time. Ah! That was really tough, guys. Let's try a simpler rhythm. Let's see if we can find something that I can play. Man, these drummers have a lot of skill. What about a funk beat? Okay, I'm trying to find something a bit easier. I'm struggling with this.
This is an experimental rock beat played at 105 beats per minute. If you want to use this beat in music, you can
Fingers
head on
crossed,
over to
this is a bit easier.
jimdooley.net and get yourself a premium membership. This will give you access to all my high quality files.
Yes, Jim, get on with it.
If you already did premium,
yes. Okay, he's hitting the crash. It's a bit too much for me. Let's try the ride. Okay, I could just about manage that. So he's playing quarter notes, fourths on the splash. Is that a splash or a crash? I'm not sure. Okay, let's carry on through. Let's pick another one at random. Slow stoner rock. Okay, this is nice. Maybe I can do this. Okay, I'm going to use this snare drum. This was easier. It's when I get the eights I'm struggling. I put in a fill there as well. Let's see what Jim does. Oh. Okay, so he switched to the open hi-hat. Mine rings out a little bit too much. Not bad. Should we take another pattern? Oh dear. Okay. Okay, he's doing a lot of grace notes there, which is really difficult to do on the keys. Haha. And on the one, he's got the open hi-hat. Ah! Ah! Ah. On the one, you've got the open. Another thing we can try and do to make it easy is to slow it down. We're playing it at the same tempo as Jim here. Yeah, that was easier. Ah. Yeah, quite challenging. Should we try a different one? Okay, I'm listening where he's putting the open hats. Okay. Something like that. Oh. Yeah. I think actually learning to play rhythms like this is really important, even if you're a piano player or a keyboard player. The piano is a rhythm instrument, so the actual timing, your feel, the groove and the swing, the precision and the accuracy that you're hitting the notes is really important in piano playing as well. So perhaps there's a lot to be learned from playing the drums, either a real drum kit like we see Jim doing, playing it on the keys like this. Let's do a slow blues. Perhaps we can get a shuffle rhythm to finish off with. Yeah. Okay, this is a triplet rhythm now. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Once we get on to some more advanced stuff, we'll try and figure out some of Jim's fills as well. But right now, let's just try and nail the basic pattern. Okay. Let's take a different kit just for fun. That'll do it. Oh. This is the pop kit. Let's listen one more time. 1, 2. think he's often playing open on the 1. Like, I've noticed I'm using different fingers as well. In the beginning, I advise you to use your second finger, but I'm finding it easier and more natural to use my thumb to strike the snare. That was an approximation. Okay, I like the blues shuffle. Let's do one more, then we'll close this video out. Why is Jim blurred out? Okay, this is nice. Shuffle rhythm. Sorry about the ads. Okay, this actually sounds quite simple if we listen to the kick and the snare. It's just alternating. I think he might be playing 4 to the floor as well, which is when the bass drum... I'm not liking this kit very much. Let's swap it out. Back to the one we had before. Or a jazz brush jazz kit. Let's try that. I think he's doing that. I think so. And what's the... Okay, let's see if we can get the basic pattern. Ah. That's a lot harder than it might look, but I hope you were inspired to go and try it out for yourselves. It's a lot of fun, and also having great timing is a super important skill when playing piano, synth or keyboard, so do go and give it a shot. Thank you then for watching, and a special shout out and thanks to all of my patrons and channel members who make these videos possible. I'll see you again next time. Cheerio. Yeah, there's room for improvement.